Welcome everyone, a warm shalom from
Bienvenidos a
Jerusalem.
todos, un cálido shalom desde Jerusalén.
We've got the Spanish translation. Please go into that room. We want to welcome everyone to our final webinar before our Envision conference, our annual conference for pastors and ministry leaders here in Jerusalem. And we start on Monday. We have a whole month. We've changed the format where we have daily programs Monday through Thursday coming to you from all over Israel. And we're going to talk a little about looking forward at Envision, what to expect this week. I have as our guests my colleagues here in the leadership of the Christian Embassy in Jerusalem, Dr. Jürgen Buehler, Dr. Mormir Kallis, Barry Dennison, David Vanderwalt, and Nicole Yoder, my fellow vice presidents. We're just pleased to have you wherever you're joining us from. And we're going to be having each one of us talk a little about what we're looking forward to in this Envision conference. I think it's going to be very exciting. We've held these for over a decade now, an annual gathering for pastors and ministry leaders to connect them in a deeper way to Israel and to our ministry here, help them understand our ministry. Because of Corona, we're having to do another virtual one this year, but we're expecting over 500 pastors from, I think we already have around 50 nations registered. So it's going to be a good international crowd, international gathering. We're going to be talking about what the Lord is doing today, even in the midst of Corona and all the turmoil and uncertainty of our day. And I want to start out by handing over to Dr. Jürgen Buehler, the president of the Christian Embassy, for some comments on why we do this anyway and why this year is so important to hold Envision.
Thank you so much, David. And it's good to see you all on that, to see your names all on this seminar or webinar. I see people are joining us from Cape Town and China, quite a number of people from China. So welcome everybody who is joining us for this webinar. It's absolutely right, like David said, that the ICEJ, we started years ago with a yearly pastors and leaders conference. And the main purpose and the main vision of that conference was to equip pastors and leaders to carry the message of Israel, the understanding of Israel, into the churches. And we felt this is in particular important because in most Bible colleges and most seminaries or theological institutions, there is not much talking about Israel. And they teach about hermeneutics and exegesis and different subjects and history and Greek and sometimes also Hebrew, but there is very little understanding about Israel. And that's, in a way, no surprise, because the curriculum of theology and institutions had time to develop over the last 2,000 years almost. And in a way, the time in which we are living right now, in the time and season of the church, in a way, it's a very new season. It's a season that didn't exist really in previous generations, that we for the first time have to deal with theologically, biblical, spiritually, prophetically, about what to do with the emerging state of Israel in the Middle East. And you might say, well, why does this have to do with the church? We don't speak also about the emergence of new states in Africa or in other continents of the world. The difference is, of course, that the Bible speaks a lot about Israel. If you do a word search in the Bible, and there are three big nouns that are the most used nouns in the entire Word of God. The first noun, I think you can guess what it is. It's the very name of God. In Hebrew, it's pronounced Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh or Jahweh or Jehovah or Yahweh, whatever your interpretation of that is. But this is the most frequent used name in the Bible, or noun or word in the Bible, as you do a word search. The very next word is the word of Israel. That means after the name of God, the next word is the word of Israel in the Bible. That means God has chosen a people here on earth with whom he is working. And he has given this people a geographical piece of land in the Middle East. And he promised them throughout centuries that one day he would bring them back to their homeland. And this is what we are witnessing with our own eyes today. And we can see this miracle unfolding as we are living here in Israel. And in a way, that's the reason why we are looking for this conference with great excitement, because I believe there are some amazing subjects and some amazing teachings in it that will help every pastor to bring the message of Israel to their own pulpit. And I think this is so important that we want pastors to speak about that subject, because if it's just left to Israel organization or Israel groups around the world, and there are many of them, of course we are one of them, but it opens the door to sometimes extremism. It opens the door that maybe a little subculture develops in a church, and we believe this subject needs to be covered from the very pulpit of a church, that the pastor himself gives leadership. And of course, we provide our services to every congregation around the world with great joy to be their extended arm here in the land of Israel. So that's one reason why we want to encourage everybody on this call. Even you might not be a pastor, you still can register. And I want you to ask you to even invite your own pastor. It's not, we significantly reduced the registration rate from $100 to $20, for the only reason that we really wanted to make it accessible to everybody. So you can sponsor easily. Your pastor or the elders of your church says there is a conference coming up very soon. Why don't you register? Here is a free entry ticket. You can send us an email and we can tell you how to do that. That will be very easy. But also be yourself at this conference. I believe it will be a blessing. The second reason, and this I think is today as important than the subject of Israel, is that we are living in a time of global shaking. It is, as a matter of fact, a time which I don't believe the world ever in its history saw a crisis like this, where the whole world, every continent is being visited by the same crisis in our world. Our world truly is at a crossroads. We are at the time of a global shaking, where we know that the time after COVID-19 will be a different time than the time which we had 2 or 3 years ago. And we felt that we should give guidance and also leadership to the subject, not because we ourselves are the great prophetic experts, but we invited key leaders from around the world to join us, to give us their insights. Number one, how they themselves mastered the COVID-19 crisis. I talked yesterday to Mike Biggle. I was so thrilled to hear what they were doing in the International House of Prayer. You will be hearing from him. I also talked to Angus Buchan, and coming away from this call with him, my heart was full of faith. And I know that your heart will be full of faith as you are coming out of those amazing seminars. So there is a lot of spiritual food and insight that we will offer you besides the Israel subject, that will help you to navigate the complex territory of this COVID crisis that we are going through. And I believe it will be a great blessing for everybody. The reason why we do charge a little symbolic fee, you can say, is that there is indeed a very big added value for not only the content, but it will be an interactive conference. That means in most of the session, I believe, except of one session that will come on the daily program, except of one session, each one of the days will be interactive. That means there will be prayer meetings where you can participate. We will come from different locations from Israel, including the Israeli Knesset, the parliament. And you can, if you register for the conference, you can ask your questions to the members of parliament. We will go up to the northern border. We'll have an amazing information about the security situation. And again, there, excuse me, you can ask your question. You will hear more about those locations in this webinar, but I think it's an amazing program. worship leaders from Israel, from around the world joining us. And I know for sure you will be blessed, and it will be really a time like Isaiah says, where we pray that you will hear this gentle voice of the Holy Spirit behind you, which says, this is the way, go, turn to the right, turn to the left, and where you will receive guidance for your ministry, for your church, for your families, and even for your own personal life. And that's our prayer. We have prayer mobilized during this conference. There will be a Rosh Chodesh prayer chain going on. They are praying 168 hours, and their main prayer focus will be the Envision conference. They will praying for us. And that's why we are very confident, because we believe in a prayer answering God, that this is going to be a very blessed time. So register. I believe David will share a little bit. There will be something special if you register during this weekend that you can get hold of. But please be part of it, and I would be thrilled to see you this coming Monday, either in one of the prayer meetings or one of the sessions when we visit the country, and get your answers and get your comments during the time. So that's my input for today. God bless you. I have to run, unfortunately, to another meeting very soon, but I'm really thrilled to look forward to see you all at the Envision conference.
Thank you, Jürgen. I tell you, during the past 2 years of all the uncertainty and the turmoil around the world from the global pandemic, I've just really felt blessed and fortunate that we have a certain understanding. There's a certain prophetic light that is given off by the restoration of Israel in our times, that it is as strong as it was 2 years ago. It's that light is even stronger now, that, you know, hopefully pastors understand it, but I think it can help you gain a deeper understanding, other ministry leaders, others, about just what a bedrock and a marker, a prophetic landmark the restoration of Israel is on our day, that we don't have to be confused amidst all of it. And we've got some good seminar teachings, some other live messages that focus on that, and many other topics, how to, encouraging you to greater leadership during this time. And we just look forward to having you with us. If you do sign up over the next 24 hours, as of now, 3 o'clock Jerusalem time on Friday through Saturday at 3 or 4 o'clock, we'll take it to 4 o'clock tomorrow. If you sign up, register for Envision within the next 24 hours, we're going to give you a downloadable teaching from last year's Envision conference, one of the best teachings from our friend Peter Sukahira, who is a co-pastor up in the north of Israel, up on Mount Carmel near Haifa, and his teaching Leadership in Times of Crisis from last year's Envision. You sign up within the next 24 hours, we will send you a free downloadable message from Peter Sukahira. He's going to be with us again this year as well with a fresh message. But you can go to the site. The registration site is on.icej.org/Envision 2022. on.icej.org/Envision 2022. That's all lowercase letters. Make sure you put it in lowercase. And here we have running a little of our agenda in coming weeks. Normally Envision is 1 week long, Monday through Thursday, but this time we're going to extend it for 4 weeks. We've studied about online conferences and came to conclusion, especially pastors, ministry leaders, they're very busy. They don't have time to sit with us all day like they would if they had come to Jerusalem in person. And so we're going to stretch out with an hour or two of programming each day, which gives you time to select when you'll be able to watch it. It's all, if you can't join us live, it will be all VOD, viewable on demand for 3 months afterwards. On Mondays, we're going to have regional prayer. My colleague, Mormir Kalos, our Vice President for International Affairs, overseeing our branches. He has divided the world into different regions, and you can join pastors, ministry leaders in your region, praying for your region, your nations, together, a real interactive session of prayer. We've just found prayer is so important, and we're going to have 2 of the 4 days each week dedicated to prayer. Wednesday, of course, will be our global prayer gathering. We have some excellent guests on there. I think Angus is going to be on there, Jürgen, Malcolm Heading, some of our other regulars and special guests. I think Mike Bickle will be with us one day. So Monday is regional prayer. On Tuesdays, we're taking virtual visits to different places. We'll be going to these places here in Jerusalem, in Israel, taking you there and holding live shows next Tuesday, this first Tuesday of Envision, on the 25th of January. We're going to be at Yad Vashem. We're coming up on the International Holocaust Remembrance Day set by the United Nations, European Union. And so we'll be going to Yad Vashem for a ceremony and speaking to the new chairman of Yad Vashem. The following Tuesday, we're going to be up north looking at the threat along the northern border. We're going to be seeing a bomb shelter put in place. Looking over into Lebanon and even Syria, the threat from Lebanon and Syria to Israel and how that is growing. The week after, we'll visit on Tuesday in the second week of February, we'll be at the Knesset, and the final week we'll be up in Nazareth with some of the local Arab communities, focusing on the Israeli Arab sector, Abraham Accords, Jewish Arab fellowship, reconciliation. These are all important topics. So that's Monday prayer, Tuesday live visits, Wednesday global prayer gathering, and then Thursdays we have 2 things that will be coming your way at 4 p.m. every Thursday for the next 4 weeks. We will have a webinar with special topics. We're going to talk a little about that, and then the evening there'll be like a keynote message, a keynote service with some of our best proven global leaders, and Jürgen will be hosting that with some of the rest of us and giving a message there on our theme of World at a Crossroads. So that's the agenda. I want to remind you again, sign up within the next 24 hours. You get Leadership in Times of Crisis, a free downloadable teaching by Peter Sukahira from last year's Envision conference. I'm going to go around to some of my fellow panelists now, fellow vice presidents, and ask, the question, looking forward at Envision, what do you look forward? What have you got planned for us? Mormir, we'll start with you. The prayer by region is important. Some of the guests you have on, tell us a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, David. Indeed, we're looking forward and well in full gear in preparation. And one of the aspects of doing it online instead of physically is that you have to somehow tackle the problem of the time zones, because people are not all at the same time at the same place like they would normally be here in Jerusalem. They are spread all around the world. And so the only way we can cater to that is, first of all, offering the opportunity to watch all these programs later as a recording on demand. That if we want to have still something really live that people can interact with, then it's the Monday prayers. So we are going to start every Monday at 6 p.m. here in Jerusalem. That's going to be the launching prayer hour with special guests, with also after we go week after week, I believe we are also going to report on some of the highlights of some of the things that happened the week before. We're also launching in the midst of the conference, the Rosh Chodesh Adar. That's also happening. It just so happens on Monday night. So this will be the main prayer meeting here. And because of the time, it will be easily accessible to all of Europe and Africa. Now, as we move forward, following the sun at 11 p.m. in Israel, we are going to have a special prayer meeting for North America, managed by our US and Canadian friends. And they are going to have their own meeting, obviously in English, and offering the local pastors from the North American continent the opportunity to interact and to pray together. Then we move on to Latin America, and that will happen at 1 a.m. Israel time, which will be evening in Latin America, Spanish and Portuguese speaking. The whole prayer hour will be done in Spanish and managed by our Spanish coordinator, Claudia. So that will be specifically for them, for the leaders who will easily be able to speak and pray in their native tongue. Then as we move on, we are also going to have a special hour of prayer for Australia and the Pacific Islands. That will happen at 3 a.m. Israel. We are probably not going to participate here, but this will be a great opportunity because that part of the world usually feels excluded from most of our programs, because when we are doing it here in the afternoon, it's in the middle of their night. So they will have their own special night. And I'm already looking forward to hearing reports, because they are already throwing out the nets and inviting many local pastors who will have the first opportunity perhaps to really engage with the ICEJ. And that prayer will be led by Sarah Way, our new and very active National Director for Australia. So that's 3 a.m. and we are already on Tuesday in our time. At 7 a.m. in Israel, we will have another prayer meeting hosted by the Southeast Asian group, by Yehu Chan from Singapore. And of course, he will be helped by the strong groups in the Philippines. And also we hope to be able to see some pastors from Thailand and from Indonesia. And that's the thing that will go every week in order. And in addition, we're also going to have a special Chinese-speaking prayer group that will start at 4 p.m. Israel, not on the first Monday, because that would precede the actual launch of the conference, but for 3 Mondays after that at 4 p.m. Israel time, which is conveniently evening time for China. And we are expecting many Chinese people. I'm greeting them. I see them also here in the webinar, and I hope that they will be really able to actively join in these prayers. Speaking of the regions and the timing, there's also one thing which is fascinating to me, and I need that we are going to have a very strong language support. Everything will be simultaneously interpreted. I mean, the Tuesday programs, the Thursday programs, even the webinars, they will be interpreted into French, Spanish, Portuguese, Russian, Chinese. These are the usual main languages, but also Thai, Indonesian, and Czech and Slovak. So all of those nations which speak those languages will be able to fully participate in the program. And the final note, those of you who register, I'm sure you will like the platform. It's similar to what we did at the Feast of Tabernacles last fall, but it's again improved. It's very easy to navigate. It's very comfortable. You will have access to everything from one place. And we were just yesterday testing the language interpretation, and there's a great improvement as well. So I'm sure you are in for a great experience, no matter what language you speak. David?
Yes, very important to mention that it's a high quality conference online platform, that it's not just all Zooming and all, but it's a live streaming platform, similar to what we used at the Feast, and Barry and David Vanderwalt, some of our team have been really working on this and improving it, and you're going to really enjoy it. And you can get in there and chat and ask your questions and interact with everyone. Now, Mormir, on the first Thursday, you have a webinar talking about anti-Semitism, because it's International Holocaust Remembrance Day on that Thursday. Who are your guests?
Yes, David, and maybe I would just start by mentioning again what we do on Tuesday, because that is the beginning of the week where the Holocaust is internationally remembered, because that's the International Holocaust Day designated by the United Nations. So everybody is aware of it. And we are beginning at the best place there is in the world at Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial Institution, by laying wreaths on behalf of the participants and the ICEJ Global Ministry, also interviewing the new chairman of Yad Vashem, and also the director of Christian Friends of Yad Vashem, Sari Granica, who is our partner in that institution. So that will set the tone already. And then on the 27th, on the very day, we are having this webinar where we actually want to focus on something very tangible, something very topical today. Because when you once visit Yad Vashem, you immediately recognize that it's not only about remembering the past, but it's also about shaping the future. That's what the slogan is. And if you want to shape the future, we have to tackle the scourge of anti-Semitism, which is rising again in all the world. And one of the aspects of anti-Semitism are these attacks against the only Jewish state in the world, against the state of Israel. It is being denied legitimacy. It is fought in the battlefield, but it is also fought in the courts of law. And this is something called lawfare. And we are going to discuss the immediate dangers Israel is facing this year, and also what we can do to help stand with Israel, with two experts. One of them is a lady from Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ms. Tanya Berk-Rafaeli, who will share her position, the perspective of the State of Israel and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as they face this danger. And then she'll be joined by Andrew Tucker from the Netherlands, a seasoned Christian lawyer specializing in this lawfare against Israel, who is going to have a very presentation. And what I heard also, the organization he represents called Think, which partners with us on a long-term basis, they are now drafting a paper, which probably will not be available next week, but once it is, we will also be able to share it with our participants. So that will be some very quality material that people out there can use and actually stand by Israel in an effective way.
Okay, thank you, Mormir. Go to my colleague Barry Dennison, Vice President for Operations in Jerusalem. And Barry, what are you looking forward to at Envision this year? What do we got in store through you? I know you're talking to a lot of local pastors in different panels and in some of the live shows.
I am. I'm very excited about some of those panels. But first, I just wanted to share this conviction I have about why our theme is so important this year. You know, the world at a crossroads. We could have replaced crossroads with crises. With my business and economic background, I'm always reading, and there was just published this January of 2022, a worldwide economic study by the Wharton School of Business, Oxford University, and the University of Singapore. And I'll confess, I haven't read the 177 pages of it, but the 2-page executive summary shared some very disturbing responses from the world's population. Only 11% of the world population expects the economy to improve from where it is now with COVID in the next 3 to 5 years. Only 16% of those surveyed around the world had any optimism for the short term, the next 5 years, for quality of life, for social interaction. So we could almost say the world is at a crisis of hope, a crisis of a lack of hope, faith, optimism for the future. And as pastors and leaders, we as the church need to speak into that, and we need to be the hope, present the hope that there is in the kingdom of God, the hope that we have through Jesus, our Messiah and Savior. And so I'm excited for Envision at this time in what's happening in the world. And you mentioned the panels. I'm in the process of recording some panels of local leaders to hear from them on some of these issues. One of the panels is Israel at the Crossroads, and it's actually very unique. One of our speakers, who is a regular with us in different events, is the attorney, Caleb Myers. And he speaks about what's happening in the economy in Israel and the economic miracle that continues. In 2021, Israel still had a growth of 7%. Probably, it's not yet out, many nations haven't released their numbers, but perhaps the highest economic growth rate in the world. Also in the last year, they saw almost $30 billion of new firms going public from new high-tech firms, most of them on the NASDAQ in the US, but they're Israeli firms, bringing the new Israeli technologies to the marketplace. So in the midst of the world not having much hope for the economy, for the future, Israelis in general are actually very optimistic about the future. The other speaker in this same session is a local pastor who is also a medical doctor, Dr. Michael Yaron. And he spoke to the division caused in the body of Christ through COVID and through the policies, vaccine, yes, no, passport from the vaccine, yes, no, and how the body needs to respond, that Jesus told us first and foremost to love one another, not to vaccinate one another. And that, I'm sure that's not unique to Israeli congregations. I'm sure that's something worldwide. So there's a lot of practical experience and wisdom that leaders in the land are going to bring to what's happening right now. We'll also have one with young adult leaders, both Arab and Jewish here in Israel, talking about what's happening among young adults in the land. And then we'll have just some seasoned pastors talking specifically about what's happening in the church at a crossroads. So I believe personally that the Spirit of God is going to speak to the hearts of our participants, these pastors and leaders, and give them tools in the Spirit to address this hopelessness in the world and to enable their leadership and their congregations to better present the hope we have in Jesus in the midst of this crisis and lack of hope in the world.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Just letting everyone know, besides the 2 times of prayer on Mondays and Wednesdays, and the live visits on Tuesdays, and the webinars and keynote messages on Thursdays, there's also going to be around 35 or 40 seminars viewable on demand whenever you want to go on the platform for the next 3 months. If you register, you can watch that. Some of these seminars with local believers is in one track that Barry is overseeing. We also have several messages in the Middle East and Isaiah 19, Abraham Accords theme. We've got restoration of Israel, calling of Israel, special Israel themes, leadership at a crossroads, the church at a crossroads, lots of good themes in the seminars as well. So lots to look forward to there. David Vanderwalt, tell us, what are you looking forward to at Envision this year?
Thank you, David. Yes, I'm looking very forward to this Envision conference. I think it's going to be a very special conference and very timely one for all of us. I think some of the highlights for me looking forward is, first of all, is that we can welcome so many different pastors and leaders from around the world. We already have over 300 signed up and registered with us from over 50 countries. And that's one of the highlights for me, that we can engage with them and connect them to Israel. On a personal level, I think I'm really looking forward to this live events we're going to have from different locations in Israel. If that's from Yad Vashem, so we can celebrate International Holocaust Survivors Day. Going up to the north in Bisgav Am, I think that's going to be really interesting, being right there on the border of Lebanon, seeing Lebanon and Syria, and get a security update and see a little bit of the land. It's just going to be amazing, especially for those of us that could not visit Israel for the last couple of years. I think that's going to be excellent. Of course, going to Nazareth and also to the Knesset is just going to be really amazing. I'm really looking forward to that, and especially the content. I think the one in Nazareth, talking to our Arab Israel Christians and seeing how they experience the land and what their impact is and what is their advice and how the crisis have affected them, I think is going to be very, very interesting. And then other highlights I'm looking forward also to is some of our international speakers. You know, what do they really have advice in teaching they have to give us and how to manage in this crisis? If that's going to be from Angus Buchan or from Billy Wilson from ORU University and Empower 21 and some others like Mike Bigley and so on. I think that's going to be another big highlight to hear from these high caliber leaders that we have. And then, of course, I've heard we have many other small greetings from parliamentarians from around the world, even the president. I won't give that away at the moment, but that's going to be very special. So yeah, a very high quality conference. And there are so many things that we can say, we can highlight and looking forward to, but I think that's the main ones, and I will stop there. Otherwise, we'll talk the whole day. But yeah, please join us. You know, we are going to have the registration open the whole time for this 4 weeks. So if you still want to sign up a friend in the middle of the conference, please do so. Again, David said that we have a 24-hour special with Peter Tukahiro download. So take the opportunity and register now for the conference. And I really believe it's going to be a wonderful blessing to everybody. And of course, the other big thing you have to remember, if you can't attend everything when it's live, then it is recorded. You have 90 days to watch it, and especially all those video on demand stuff. So it's a wonderful opportunity, basically for a symbolic price. Take the opportunity. It's going to be wonderful. So David, we are excited and we're looking forward to the conference, and hopefully many, many more will join us. We expect that to happen. So thank you, David. I will give it over to you.
Barry, you had something you wanted to add about the conference platform?
Yeah, one of the amazing tools of this platform is not just the ease to participate in the events, but the participants. First off, the participant has a choice of making their profile public or private. So if they don't want anyone chatting with them, they can be anonymous on the website, but they can turn their profile public and make them available to see, and you can open up and see, oh, Moamir's on at the same time. I haven't seen him in a year, and you can ask for a chat. And if you both say yes to it, it actually opens up like a mini Zoom where the two of you can see one another face to face. You can interact as if you were standing in the hallway at a conference. In addition to that, we're working on creating some lounge type meeting times opportunities. We're still working through issues of time zones, etc. But more than just engaging with the leadership of ICEJ and our speakers, our participants will be able to engage with one another as well.
Okay, thank you, Barry, for bringing that out. Now we go to Nicole, Vice President at the Christian Embassy for Aid and Aliyah. I know one of the things at Envision we try to accomplish every year is letting these pastors know about the day-to-day practical work of the embassy here in the land, and whether it's helping Holocaust survivors or putting in bomb shelters or helping with Aliyah. And what do we have planned, Nicole, about this at Envision, and what are you looking forward
to? First of all, I just love this country. And so one of the things that I'm looking forward to is just hearing the many voices of the different people that we're going to hear at this conference. You've already heard a bit of an overview from my colleagues here. And for those of you who might be on the webinar today who maybe know less about Israel but are curious, this is a great introduction. This is a great way to come close and to hear a little bit more about what's going on in Israel from the inside. We talked here a little bit about some of the high tech and some of the other things that have been exploding here in Israel in the last few years during COVID, and you're going to hear speakers on that point. I'm also going to speak on that because it has implications for Israel in various ways. Besides the fact that it brings prosperity to the country, it also has its other challenges, because there are people in the country who need work, they need employment, they need to be upskilled in their ability to find good labor. And right now, that particular job market, the whole high-tech industry, has a huge number of jobs where people are not able to, they're not skilled enough to fill the jobs. And so there's actually a shortage of labor. And this creates an opportunity for us to help bridge some of the gaps between those who have and those who do not have in the country. And so that's going to be something that I'm going to address as far as one of the modern day challenges of Israel. We are also going to be, David mentioned, up on the northern border. Another one of our big projects in ICEJ aid is helping with crisis situations in the country, whether that has to do with natural disaster or vulnerable communities on the borders who might be under attack, or the corona crisis. And so, as we've mentioned, we're going to be delivering, maybe not exactly on the visit, the delivery may not happen because it's very hard to time it just precisely, but right around that time, we're delivering shelters to the northern border. We're going to have a security update from someone who's very knowledgeable, both politically and security-wise, regarding the northern border. And we're going to be talking with our partners with the shelters and understanding why these are so critically important for these communities. The last year we placed 50 of these shelters, which is incredibly exciting. Our donors have been so generous. And I want to tell you that there's such a great need, and the people are so deeply grateful. Not just that it's going to save lives, but it's also going to give them peace of mind as they're sitting in these vulnerable communities, and alarms can go off at any time. So you're going to learn more about that. I also want to highlight that we spoke about video on demand, and there's one particular seminar that I just want to mention. We want to obviously bring greater understanding to the church. That's part of the mission of the ICEJ, to connect Christians with Israel and Israel with Christians, but also to educate, to fight anti-Semitism and all of these things. So with the education, and as far as, you know, Israel and the church, what's the big picture? What's the big story? We have to make sure that we get it right. And often you hear about the political conflict, and there's maybe many questions people may have. And one of the conflicts, or one of the main things, is the conflict over the land. And there's many questions and many angles here to be considered, but I'm excited to highlight that we're going to have the privilege of having Dr. Gerald McDermott with us to talk about a theology of the land and how that is actually also in the New Testament. This is a professor who's taught for many years. He's and really an excellent scholar. I've just had the privilege myself of being in one of his courses at the Jerusalem Seminary, which is a brand new Protestant seminary just starting out here in Jerusalem. And so you can check that out if you're interested in studying online as well. But he is going to bring a really powerful lecture. And if you haven't ever had the chance to read any of his books, those are also going to be available, and so you can also have the opportunity to check those out, understanding the Jewish roots of Christianity, understanding, you know, all of the basics about Israel. And it might be something even that you decide to pass on to some others who maybe need to understand just the beginning points. So I'm excited overall, just for all of the teaching, all of the conversations we're going to get to have. And I know the Lord's just going to bless our time together. So really looking forward.
Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, this Dr. Gerald McDermott, he's been very effective in recent years, really helping people understand the land issue, land theology, and this question of whether the New Testament affirms a last days restoration of Israel, the Jewish people back to their land, And of course, he makes that case very well. He's written or edited several books in this regard, including The New Christian Zionism. You got to hold it up again because it wasn't in focus. You got to hold it. It's still not
right in front of your face, Nicole. It's blurred out because of your blurring. Pull it back.
There, somewhere
Hold on
there.
a second. I'll stop blurring.
The New Christian Zionism by Dr. Gerald McDermott. We're really pleased to have him. Yeah, we are pulling out a few of the speakers that we have on the roster and giving them a little extra time too to do a more complete presentation with question and answer and interaction in it. And I'm very pleased that we're going to have Dr. Brad Young as well from Oral Roberts University talking about his book, The Newer Testament. And it's basically an English translation where, you know, normally they translate from the Greek into English. You skip the Latin Vulgate. In modern times, you go straight from the Greek into English, but he tries to go back into the original Hebraic. There are different manuscripts, parchments of some of the books of the New Testament, and really understanding. He's an expert in Hebraic roots and Jewishness of Jesus, and so he has a new version of the New Testament, which is quite fascinating. You need to get it just for the footnotes on some of these passages that really, some of the tough New Testament scriptures that, you know, have been used against the Jews, like the synagogue of Satan. I think it's in Revelation 2 and all. And actually it means something almost completely opposite of what how it's traditionally been defined and used against the Jewish people. And he's just a real treasure for the body of Christ, understanding the Jewishness of Jesus, the Jewish context of Jesus and his followers up into Paul. We're also going to have a seminar by him on addressing the issue of Christology. And this charge first arose out of liberal theologians in Germany that it was, Jesus never said he was Messiah or divine, that it was Paul under Greco-Roman influence who deified Jesus, turned him into a god, and created this separate religion. So we're going to let Brad Young, a real expert, address this. If you're a pastor, ministry leader, you're going to need this, because it's a increasing challenge, even among Jewish people, our Jewish friends. They're starting to rediscover the Jewish Jesus and claim him again. But some are saying, oh, but it was Paul who deified him. Because we're Orthodox, we can't accept that. And we're going to really delve into that in one of the seminars, and then the webinar on the Newer Testament. Nicole, you mentioned an expert on when we go and visit the North. We're going to have IDF major, he's in the reserves, Elliot Chadoff, a very impressive guy. He's got 35 years of experience in the IDF. He's still in the home front command for the northern area, helping prepare for the troubles that might come. We're going to ask Elliot in a webinar. He'll come, we'll interview him up near the border, but we'll have a separate webinar on the third Thursday of Envision, where we're going to ask him, look, Hezbollah has had 150, maybe 200,000 rockets and missiles that they've been sitting on for 10, 15 years, ever since the 2006 Second Lebanon War. Hamas has started several rocket wars against Israel from Gaza. And why hasn't Hezbollah joined in that? Why are they holding on to all these rockets? It's a very important question. And also, are they close to using it now that Iran is getting very, very close to the nuclear threshold? And so we've got some very important questions for those of us who really care about Israel, or who just want to observe and stay informed on the Middle East, from Elliot Chadoff. And our last day, we're going to have a webinar on a book that we've all just read. We're going to have a discussion among our leadership here on this new book, A Short History of Christian Zionism by the Canadian professor and author Donald M. Lewis. Very good, A Short History of Christian Zionism. It's available through our bookstore, and we're all reading the book. It's a history from the first century forward of Christians who believed in a last day restoration of Israel. What were their approaches to the Jewish people? Very fascinating. We're going to have a discussion on that. This gentleman, Donald Lewis, we were going to invite him to Envision. He just passed away, I think, in November. It was a real shame. He was going to be one of our main guests, but we're going to discuss his book and sort of figure out where we are in that whole timeline of 2,000 years of the church and the different views towards the Jewish people. And just, I think we're going to find out we're on very solid ground, but it's also good to inspect ourselves and understand where other Christians may have gotten it right or wrong, and how we can really be more effective in our ministry of comfort today. So that's going to be on the last Thursday. Anything anyone else wants to add now about Envision? Again, you go to the registration site, on.icej.org/Envision 2022. And if you do it within the next 24 hours, you'll get a free download of a teaching Leadership in Times of Crisis by Peter Sukahira from last year's Envision. The basic package is $20. There's also, for $70, a study package where we have several books that we're going to send to you, some ICEJ pens and some other things. It's an enhanced package for $70. You might want to consider that. But anything else anyone wants to add right now?
Well, I would just add that any of our participants who maybe do not know Peter Sukahira, which if you've not been at our conferences or not been in our global prayer gathering, Peter is an amazingly gifted communicator of sound biblical teaching. He's one of our favorite speakers, be it Envision, be it the Feast of Tabernacles. And so this free audio download of one of his previous Envision keynote messages, it'll be a very powerful message. And so if you're thinking about registering, do so in the next 24 hours to just take advantage of that free audio teaching of Peter. And it's like you get an additional part of the Envision conference that will be a strong spiritual blessing.
Amen. Yeah, we have some really, Angus Buchan will be with us, as we mentioned, Manasseh Colavuso from the Pacific Islands. We'll have Malcolm Heading as one of our speakers. When I look down the list, we have local pastors like Israel Pakhtar, and we mentioned Caleb Myers, Michael Yaron. We have Billy Wilson from Empowered 21 and ORU. Peter Sukahira. We have Reverend Afif Halasha, who is from Jordan, an Arab pastor. We have a guy, Avi Yuresh, who he's actually a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. This might be a first for the Christian Embassy, but he has a book, Thou Shalt Innovate. He's an expert on Israeli innovation, inventions, high tech. He's with us. George Michael. He's the husband of our USA director, Susan Michael, but he's an expert in his own right, Egyptian-born, expert on the Middle East and Arab affairs and linguistics. He's consulted with the Pentagon and other government agencies on understanding the Middle East. We have our friend and colleague, Tom Craig, Middle East coordinator for the ICEJ, talking about the Isaiah 19 highway. Fabian Grech will come to us again from Iraq with the latest there. Some good testimonies. We have Sigfrid Tomaszewski, who's an evangelist in North Africa, has testimonies of what's happening there. Our dear chairman, Ingolf Elsel, he's the chairman of the Christian Embassy and head of the Pentecostal fellowships in Europe and in Germany for many years, a real denominational leader. He's going to have a teaching on why churches, why we should be connected with Israel. I found it very fantastic message to, a pastoral teaching from a pastor to pastors on the whole Israel question. We have many more that are going to be with us, and we're just so looking forward to having you there. Your chance, sign up today, get the Peter Sukahira free teaching over the next 24 hours, on.icej.org/envision 2022. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank my colleagues. We're going to extend a warm Shabbat Shalom from Jerusalem. Guys, can we all do it together? You're ready? 1, 2, 3. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay. Thank you for joining us, and make sure to be a part of Envision. We start on Monday with prayer, Tuesday with a visit to Yad Vashem. Be there. God bless you.
Shalom from Jerusalem, and I want to personally invite you to Envision 2022, our annual Pastors and Leaders Conference. And again, because of COVID-19, it will be a purely online conference. But we do know that in spite of all the lockdowns and restrictions, the Lord is not restricted, neither is He locked down. We will be joined by key leaders from around the world that will inspire you as they tell what God is doing in these days around the world. And we also will take you to different places in Israel. We will take you to the Knesset, to the northern border of Israel. You will receive updates on the Middle East and what's taking place right here in the Holy Land, in the land of Israel. It's a conference that will strengthen your faith. It's a perfect way how to start 2022. And I look forward greeting you and welcoming you at Envision 2022. God bless you and see you next week.